You're crouched in a smoke-filled rock shelter 12,000 years ago. The fire's dying. Someone hands you a bundle of dried leaves rolled tight in bark. You don't know it yet, but you're about to do something archaeologists spent decades insisting didn't happen this early. The proof isn't a pipe or a cigarette. It's 4 tiny black seeds. For most of the last century, the story of smoking had a clean, tidy beginning. A smoking pipe. Alabama. About 3,300 years old. Nicotine residue baked into the stone. That was the line in the sand. Before that pipe, humans were supposedly too busy hunting mammoths and surviving ice ages to light anything up for fun. It's a comfortable story. Linear. Predictable. Humans discover fire. Humans discover agriculture. Humans eventually discover recreational drugs. Roughly in that order. Like a tech tree in a video game. But that story was built entirely on what archaeologists happened to find. And what they happened to find was a pipe. Hard to miss, easy to date, easy to publish. What they hadn't found, because nobody was really looking, was something much smaller. Something that wouldn't survive 12,000 years unless the conditions were exactly, improbably right. Rewind to 2015. A team of archaeologists is digging in the Great Salt Lake Desert, a landscape so barren today it looks like the surface of another planet. Under a few centimeters of dirt, they find charred plant matter, duck bones, and the remains of an ancient fireplace. Nothing screams rewrite history yet. It looks, at first, like leftovers from someone's dinner. Then they start sorting through what's left in that fire pit, and they find 4 small blackened seeds. Not corn, not wild grain, not anything you'd eat by accident while cooking a duck. Radiocarbon dating on the charred wood around them put the hearth at roughly 12,300 years old, and the seeds came from a plant called Nicotiana attenuata, wild tobacco, sometimes called coyote tobacco. Archaeologist Duran Duke, who led the team, called it a surprise. That might be underselling it. This pushed the earliest known human use of tobacco back by about 9,000 years. Not 900, 9,000. That's the difference between recent history and before the invention of the wheel, before writing, before most of what we call civilization had even started.
Let's go back to that rock shelter for a second. You, 12,000 years ago, holding that bundle of leaves. You're not living in some primitive footnote before real human behavior kicks in. You are the real behavior. Somebody in your group knew this plant, knew where to find it, knew what it did to your body, and chose, deliberately, to bring it back to camp and put it in the fire. That's not an accident. That's culture. So here's the problem archaeologists actually had to solve. Seeds aren't the part of the tobacco plant you'd use to get its effects. Nicotine lives in the leaves, not the seeds. So why were the seeds even there? The leading theory is that people weren't smoking cigarettes exactly. They were probably twisting the leaves, stems, and other plant material into a wad, then chewing it or sucking on it, the same way some cultures chew coca leaves today. The seeds, still attached to the plant when it was gathered, likely got tossed in or spit out near the fire almost as an afterthought, a byproduct. Which, honestly, might be the most human detail in this entire story. 12,000 years later, we can still reconstruct someone's habit of spitting seeds into the fire pit. Now, to understand why any of this mattered to them, you need to understand what tobacco actually is, chemically. And this is where it gets a little uncomfortable, because tobacco was never designed for you. Think of nicotine as the plant's version of a home security system, except instead of a loud alarm, it's a chemical that scrambles the nervous system of anything that tries to eat it. Insects that chew on tobacco leaves get hit with a compound that overloads their nerve receptors. It's not there for us. It's a weapon, refined over millions of years by natural selection. Natural selection behaves less like a gentle guiding hand and more like a ruthless optimization algorithm, running the same brutal test over and over. Does this trait help you survive long enough to reproduce? Keep it. Doesn't help? Gone. Tobacco's algorithm landed on nicotine as pest control.
Our nervous systems just happen to have receptors nicotine fits into like a key in a lock, a coincidence of biology that turned a plant's anti-insect defense system into something that also, in smaller doses, sharpens human focus and triggers a rush of dopamine. We didn't discover a drug, we hijacked a weapon. Here's the honest caveat, because unearned certainty is its own kind of lie. We don't know exactly how those Ice Age humans experienced it.
We don't know if it was ritual, medicine, recreation, or all three tangled together. The seeds can't tell us that part. What they can tell us is that the relationship existed, early, intentional, and specific. And that specificity matters more than you'd think. Here's what really got researchers' attention. The wild tobacco at the Wishbone site wasn't growing locally. Chemical analysis of stone tools shows these people were highly mobile, moving hundreds of kilometers on a seasonal cycle, hunting and gathering across huge stretches of desert and marshland. The tobacco probably came from foothills or mountains more than 13 kilometers away. So this wasn't a plant that fell into the fire by accident. Somebody walked a long way, recognized this specific plant among hundreds of others, and carried it back, likely with intention and possibly with the exact use already in mind. That detail quietly rewrites something bigger than smoking history. It's evidence for how sophisticated the earliest people in the Americas actually were. Their botanical knowledge, their travel networks, their capacity to identify, transport, and use a psychoactive plant this early. We're talking about a period so close to the initial peopling of the Americas that researchers still argue about the exact timeline. And these same people already had a plant of choice. Picture that rock shelter one more time. The bundle in your hands isn't some crude, accidental discovery. It's the result of a chain of decisions. Recognize the plant, travel to get it, prepare it, choose to use it around the fire with other people. Every link in that chain requires memory, planning, and shared knowledge passed between people. That's not a footnote before civilization. That is civilization in one of its earliest visible forms. But here's where it gets even bigger than one desert campsite. Because tobacco isn't some lonely exception in the human story. It's part of a much older, much wider pattern. Across the globe, wherever humans have settled, they've sought out plants that alter how the brain works. Coca leaves chewed in the Andes, betel nut used across South and Southeast Asia for thousands of years, fermented drinks appearing independently in multiple ancient cultures almost as soon as agriculture gave people surplus grain to work with. The details change. The impulse doesn't. Humans, it turns out, have never really needed permission to seek out a chemical shift in how they feel. We've been doing it since before we had permanent houses, before we had written language, before arguably we had civilization in any sense a textbook would recognize.
The wishbone seeds just happen to be one of the oldest fingerprints we've found of that impulse in North America. Proof that this wasn't imported by later cultures, wasn't a habit that arrived with agriculture or trade. It was already here, in the hands of hunter-gatherers 12,000 years ago, next to duck bones and stone spear points in a marshland that's now one of the driest places in the country. Now, here's the reframe. Remember that dying fire? That bundle of leaves in your hands? You're not standing at the edge of human history, waiting for the real story to begin later with pipes and pyramids and written records. You're standing inside it. The choice you're about to make to use this specific plant, gathered from far away, prepared a specific way, shared around this fire, is already a fully human act. Curious, deliberate, social. Those 4 charred seeds sat underground for 12,000 years, waiting for someone to ask the right question. Not did ancient people smoke, but how far back does this go, and what does it tell us about who they were? And the answer wasn't a pipe or a ritual object or a piece of art. It was something almost embarrassingly small. 4 seeds, spat out, forgotten, burned, buried, and somehow, against every odd, still legible thousands of generations later. Maybe that's the real lesson sitting inside this discovery. The biggest rewrites of human history don't always come from grand monuments or dramatic ruins. Sometimes they come from the smallest, most careless leftovers of an ordinary night around a fire,
the parts nobody at the time thought were worth keeping. You reach for the bundle. The fire's almost out. And somewhere, thousands of years in the future, someone is going to dig up what's left of tonight and finally understand what it meant to be you. Here's where it gets weird. The smallest, most forgettable moments of your life might be the only parts of you that history ever gets to read.